Well, this is the beginning of another week in which we will try to do good for the world and the good of humanity. And Pat McGart is going to play his share. Aren't you? Play your part in bettering humanity's condition.
Absolutely.
I can see that from looking at you. You're like a
You
man
can, of
who.
course, you can. Hey, Jude, last night, I was watching. I was up late the Olympics. I was watching the opening ceremony for tennis, but we'll come back to that. But I was watching this program. Can't remember what it's called. I was on. I think it might have been BBC Four about America and about the America's role as the sort of world's policeman. Does America have the right to?
Oh yes, yes.
And they're all the big hitters were on it. Prime ministers and Secretary of States and all that. Jude, I came away with a conclusion. The Americans are one of the most amoral group of people on this planet. And for years, they've been preaching, I know, this Bible and God bless them. What they did to the Kurds during that Iran-Iraq war, they told people to rise up against Saddam Hussein. And then when they did, they just abandoned them. And they knew what Saddam was up to, and they did nothing about it, and so on. And everything was a calculation, Jude, about for their oil. There was no morals in it, so all that sort of stuff. And I'm sort of going, remember in Ireland we bought this crap that the Americans were, the good guys and all that. Jude, if you watch that program, you'd come away and say, how much worse could Russia or China? The Americans basically sat back and allowed massacre after massacre after massacre. And look what they're doing in Israel now as well. Anyway, you should come back to that too.
You have to accept the fact that America is an empire, and empires do what empires do, which is find the natives, steal their stuff, and in many cases then kill them. But that's a very broad sort of. By the way, have you been? I haven't got this listed, but have you been following anything of Kamala Harris's campaign since she was joined by Tim Walz?
Yeah, I have indeed.
What do you think? Did you see any of the speeches? Did you?
Yeah, I saw one of them on CNN. I think the other night, or where was it? One of them. I was just flicking through the channels. Anyway, the bottom line is, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, or whatever it is his name is, have definitely got Trump rattled big time. What do you call Nancy Pelosi said that as long as Joe Biden stayed in the race, Donald Trump was. She said he had a rose-strewn path back to the White House because it was just been so made easy for him. Kamala Harris has, as I mentioned on Friday, she has doubled the donations in a space of a couple of days. Trump was on something like 138,000. She's on 300 and something million, and donations. Apparently, she was at some Air Force base there at the weekend on Friday night, and I think Saturday, massive crowd. Trump came on and tried to say it was AI generated, but the media people who were there said not at all. It's a huge rally, and but the New York Times has said he has been heard on a couple of occasions. Now, has people denied referring to Kamala Harris as, quote, a bitch. Right. Here's the thing. He's a bit of a track record. Remember, he called Hillary Clinton nasty. He called Carly Farina, who was a Republican standing against him, as horseface. Remember E. Jean Carroll, the author and columnist, she accused him of rape. He called her a nut job. And the famous one, he grabs women by the pussy. He seems to have a real thing against women.
He has a problem with women. There's no doubt about it. There's a problem with humanity, actually. Just to go back to one or two things you said there, you're right. The donations have doubled roughly for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz when compared with what Trump's getting, or what they themselves were getting before that. But I'm not sure that because you get big money coming in, you need to know where it's coming from. I mean, if there's billionaires throwing a lot of money at them, that's not necessarily good. Well, it's good to have it to help your campaign, but if you have everybody, lots of small shareholders.
Well, that's what the Democrats are claiming, that a lot of what they're getting is the Joe Soap donations. The allegation was that Trump's getting the big money from the vested interest, that they're getting the money from. Well, that's their claim. Whether it's true.
Were you, Pat, impressed by? Did you see Tim Walz speaking?
No,
I know
I
you're
haven't come
impressed with him.
across him. No, you were
Well,
quite impressed
I've
with
seen
him.
him, and I watched Kamala Harris. There was a big rally they had in Las Vegas. It's on
Yeah.
YouTube, the whole thing. It
Mm,
was on for about, oh God, I don't know. I gave up after about an hour.
mm,
Very interesting. She does a lot of smiling, which is what Trump goes after her for, I think. And to be
uh,
honest, being so smiley is not quite what you want from your president of the
mm,
strongest power in the world. Um,
yeah.
on the other hand, they've managed to convert that into a sort of a virtue because they are talking now about the fact that Kamala Harris has brought back the joy into
Uh,
politics, which is a
uh,
bit different.
uh,
She is quite good when she just gets serious and starts talking about stuff. But
yeah.
in this Las Vegas mass meeting, and there was an awful lot of people there, the man Tim Walz came on first, and he really, wound
Got
up
them.
the crowd, got them going, and pumped them up. He's a good emotional speaker,
Uh,
but he didn't say a word of anything that made any kind of sense in terms of policy or anything. It was all I'm from small town America, and I know that anything is possible, and so on.
uh,
Kamala Harris came on and she said, "Oh, thank you, Las Vegas. You're so good." And thanked
mm,
everybody, various names of people. And we are so grateful to Joe Biden. And the crowd chanted, "Joe, Joe, Joe, Joe." And her speech, again and again, she really just talked about things like, we want to bring back decency to American politics. We want to make an America where everyone feels they're wanted. It was all kind of aspirational generalities. And to be
yeah.
honest with you, if it was somebody else, but I mean, I want her to win and Walsh to win, but if it was somebody else, you could be very critical of those. But the crowd loved it. The crowd
Dude, the
loved it.
Americans love this, mom apple pie and the white picket fence, and
Yeah.
go Jets, go, and all this bollocks. It's inanities. It's absolute inanities. And the American, hey, Jude, only 10% of Americans have passports. They don't travel. Like I think they must. I'm generalizing here, but they're a lot of places they are basically, I don't know, put a donkey up and they'd buy the bollocks that is coming out, and you sort of go, what is, and then well, you look at somebody like Trump, a man who has had an affairs with porn stars, who's committed adultery, who has been accused of rape. In fact, E. Jean Carroll was awarded, what is it, $80 million or some bloody thing. And then look at all the things he has done, and yet he is a serious contender, and they seem to have no problem with it. And Jude, there is no contender in the Republican Party that can take on Donald Trump, one of the biggest parties ever, in the world, and so on. So you sort of say to yourself, like, what does America stand for now?
Well, you see, I think people seek out simplicities, and here's Trump saying, "Make America great
And
again,
yeah,
great again. It once was great. I will restore that greatness." If you listen to Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, they're saying something similar. They're saying, "We'll never go back. We'll never go." I had the crowd chanting, never go back. We'll never go back. We'll never go
mm,
back. I.e., we'll never go back to Trump.
yeah.
Uh, it's sort of a name. Do you think the American public's more stupid than or easily led by the
Yes, Jude,
nose
I
than
think that's
are,
it.
say, Irish people?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. I don't know what sort of the system in America is, but it seems to be every con man can get elected. Like, when you see some of the guys who have elected in places like Texas and all the rest of it, and the village idiot seems like a fucking more, I better not swear anymore. But,
Too late now, Pat. Too late.
no, there was a guy on the other day said, if you said, if you said he's an effing idiot. He says everybody knows who you mean. It's a reference to Trump. And he said, isn't that a terrible state of American politics when one of the leading candidates for the presidency, when you say he's an effing idiot, people automatically know who you mean.
I think one of the big disappointments for the Trump campaign must be the fact that they've signed up J.D. Vance, who looked like a really good pick, and
Uh,
now he's looking less good all the time. And
yeah,
it's impossible not to mentally compare him with Walsh. And
uh,
Walls is so wholesome and big, and doesn't afraid to say. He's always saying things like that. Keep out of our, mind your own damn business. He'll use damn and that kind of thing every
uh,
so often. And
mm,
he really sounds like a coach of a high school football team.
yeah.
Whereas Vance is a guy who claims to have humble origins, like Tim, but he was he went to Yale, and he went to the venture
He became a
capitalist world.
venture capitalist,
Yeah.
and
So
he's
I
married to
think
a woman who's a lawyer, who's a high flying partner in a law firm.
yeah, I'm quite at the moment. The polls are looking very positive for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So I'm glad that's happening. Okay, well, we shouldn't spend so much time on that. Um, let's go and talk about the Olympics a bit, Pat. They're all
Yes.
over now. Do you feel an emptiness in your heart now, or an emptiness in your gut? You've had it for the last 2 weeks.
Well, got to admit, Judah, I probably binged on the Olympics. I sat every night. No, I'm a big athletics fan, and I sat and watched the athletics particularly. And in fairness, the first week too, I got really involved in swimming. I don't normally, I'm not that big a fan of swimming, but it was very good as well. And like every night, I came in about 6 o'clock or 6:30 and sat down. Never moved to about 10 o'clock. So yeah, I will miss it this week. But haven't Judah, like I heard somebody say the other day, and it is true. When Ireland used to go there, we used to go just to make up the numbers. We used to smile at the commentators and said, no, we don't expect you won anything. We're here. That attitude has totally changed, Jude. We were competitive in a whole lot of sports, like things like rowing, boxing, athletics, even swimming. Jude, it's changed, and I think it all the catalyst for that was about 10 years ago, or maybe even less. The Irish boxing team set up what they called a high performance center. They brought in coaches from the outside, and there were no wrong. The boxers
particularly Cuba.
Cuba, exactly. And know this thing that boxers used to all train in their own home clubs, and they didn't follow the diet, and they didn't do this, and they didn't. They were all brought together, and they're strict. This is what you eat. This is the time you go to bed. This is what you do. This is your training. This is your diet, and they monitor their whatever and so on. And just suddenly Irish boxing took off. No, we're a wee small nation, but we started winning medals. Now you see it even. The athletics, the 4x4, the women, they nearly won a medal. They genuinely did. And like at one stage, we wouldn't even been on the same park as these people.
Well, that's the general sentiment. For example, in the Irish Times today, they're saying, Ireland's reached a new level and it's going to be hard to keep up this standard.
Yeah.
I think they're overstating it. I do think they're overstating it. I'm not saying that they didn't do very well. I mean, the more gold medals, more medals than they ever had. And that's just terrific. We normally would expect it from a boxer or a couple of boxers maybe, but that'd be about it. So it's great to see it, like the two people in the swimming as well. And as you say, the women's, what was it, 4x100 meters relay, they were very, very close. And there were other instances where they just about could have got a medal, but they didn't quite manage it. But listen, the fact is they didn't manage it. We had Sonia Sullivan. I remember Sonia Sullivan. And Sonia Sullivan nearly won an Olympic medal. And do you remember what was the other guy? I've forgotten his name now.
Eamon Coughlin, by any chance?
Coughlin, yeah. Coughlin nearly won the gold.
I think that's a bit unfair. At one stage, Jude, we were never anywhere close.
No, that's true. I agree. That's progress. But don't forget,
definitely moved. Jude, let's put it this way: I think we're ahead of wasn't it Jeremy? We're ahead of Brazil in the middle table. We're ahead of India. We're ahead of Indonesia. We're ahead of, I can't remember. And I looked. Geez, Ireland's way ahead of them.
Well, they definitely have improved, Pat, but I don't think we should overstate it. And it has echoes for me of Italia 90, which I loved. That was one of the best experiences on television I've ever had, was when the Ireland team was playing in Italia 90. But the fact of the matter was, the glory of it all was that we'd got it to the quarterfinals, I think it was. And I remember Jack Charlton saying, God almighty, you guys are like this now. What would you like if we'd won something?
Yeah.
So I think we tend to inflate things that actually, viewed objectively, aren't that terrific. I think Ireland has definitely improved, but to talk about us all having moved to a new level, I
No,
have to.
I agree with that, but on the basis of this so far, Jude,
Mm,
there were performances all over the place, and I think the days. I heard somebody on the other day, that said young Irish athletes used to go, like, we didn't have the proper training facilities. In some of the races, we were maybe 10 seconds, and like the 1,500 meters, our
yeah.
best guys were about 10 seconds behind them. That day's gone, Jude, and they're getting closer and closer. There could be a breakthrough. No, I'm not. I've got to admit, I take your sort of your Butler Yeats cast a cold eye and all this, but
Mhm.
I do think that there's a change in mentality. There's a change in expectation. The days of finishing last, but that was well done. No heroic failure. I think that day's done. You're
Mm.
expected to do well now.
Well, listen, Pat, there's talk in the papers this morning of spending 500 million, five
Yeah,
hundred million before the next, I was going to say elections, the next
yeah,
games
yeah.
on the athletes. Now, those are huge sums of money. Do you think that would be money well spent?
I do, because it's good for
Or what
it's good.
about, what about homelessness? What about inequality?
But you keep hearing this argument about everything. What about, like around here, we should be building roads. But there's more to life than just roads and hospitals and schools. There has to be other things like when I was growing up, there's no such a thing as spending money on arts or or painting or anything like that. Life's a bit of a mosaic. You have to spend money on certain things. It just can't be all okay. Hey, let's build a road here and a road there. Great, wonderful. But what about the other things?
Well, I agree with you. I would be the last to say we should push the arts aside or, sporting achievements aside. But I think you need to watch that you don't get carried away with a rush of blood to the head because the
Yeah,
team Ireland did so well.
yeah,
You've got to remember, like there's things like the health service,
yeah.
social
But
care,
they're throwing
some
massive amount of
really
money at that
serious
as well.
stuff. I mean, if
Yeah,
you had
but
a,
just I wrote it down by the way. In 2019, the sports capital program was 59 million. In 222, it was 166 million. And in 224, this September, apparently it'll be announced that it's 250 million. So it's gone up from 59 million to 250 million.
Yeah, you see, in one way, I think it's a great idea. You have to invest if you're going to have any performance, but
Yeah,
at the same time, I worry that you get carried away with it. And for somebody who has a loved one sick, or if you're sick yourself, or you need social care, or all these other things, or when you work in a library, Jesus, libraries are closing all over the place.
yeah,
Uh, would you not say maybe I could live without some of the heroes appearing on the TV after winning, the 100 meters or whatever? Well, they'll never win the 100 meters, but winning some of these field events
yeah.
or track events. I just think we maybe get carried away a wee bit. Anyway, would you approve of the Olympics overall, Pat? And we'll just take a
Yeah,
couple.
Jude, I do. I think, Jude, we need Jesus. When you look around the world today, I get so I was probably angry is not the right word, but when I
Mm,
see what happened in Gaza, I know
mm, mm.
you need a distraction. God help the people in Gaza; they don't have a distraction.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when I see the cynicism, and I get so Jude, I think I'm 70 years of age. I should know better, but the silence emanating from Washington and from Westminster. Look at the weekend. And Israel launched another attack on a school where displaced people were sheltering. I think they were trying to get a couple of Hamas operatives. They killed more than 100 people, more
Mm,
than 100 people.
mm,
Nobody's quite sure
mm.
yet. And apparently, the vast, vast, vast majority of them were women and children.
Ah,
And you can see them pulling it. If you watch Al Jazeera, by the
mm,
way,
mm.
Al Jazeera, you should watch because the BBC and ITV and the Americans are not showing what's really happening. Do I have stopped sort of watching Al Jazeera tell
Oh,
actually, but it's what we say, unbelievable stuff.
bleak.
Anyway,
Yeah.
bleak, and it's more than bleak, just depression on a highest scale. And not a word, and it's so disproportionate. There's no red lines for Israel. And I was reading a thing this morning. A vicar, and I think it was on the Mail. He had to go with Justin Welby for supporting the ICJ ruling against Israel. He said, if a bishop is going to go into the politics, he should at least know what you talk about, and know what he talking about. This guy just come on and get a total justification for everything that's Israel. They're defending themselves and all this bollocks, and so on. And so you just sort of go, like, what does Israel have to do before people like me and you sort of get listened to?
I would take that the other way around, Pat. What do you and I or other people need to do before they can stop Israel from what they're doing?
Yeah.
It's pretty damned obvious as far as supplies of weaponry,
Yeah.
especially US is funneling weapons into Israel. And
Yeah.
that's what they're using to kill all those people.
Yeah.
Now, that just should have stopped. And there's no way that Joe is a good old guy and they would chant him and thank him for what he's done for America. That was obscene, and he knew it, and it's still going on. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I saw where Simon Harris was saying how awful this was, and how you really have to stop, and so on. And I was saying, well, is it like, would you not have said that at the very beginning? Do you take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 months, 5 months before it really strikes you that this is absolutely obscene? And then, apart from just simply saying stuff, surely there's things you could do. Kick the Israeli ambassador out of his embassy or her embassy as quickly as you can. A good firm boot in the arse. If ever there was an ambassador who's earned it, it's the Israeli ambassador. And that at least would give a signal to the world. Look, we cannot put up with this. This is all we can do. But this is our signal. We reject what these people
I was reading the thing this morning, Jude. Can't remember the name of the vicar. He was having a go at his own archbishop, but he basically said Hezbollah is going to attack and Iran is going to attack and all the rest. Jude, no condemnation whatever of Israel, none. It's all this sort of weird defense. He doesn't say, and of course it goes back to this one in 19 whatever it was, or what they pulled out of Gaza and Hamas took over right away. But he didn't say it as usually. Israel controlled exit and entry. They controlled fishing. They controlled electricity. They controlled food supply. In other words, it was just they took the Israelis out of it, but left it as a sort of concentration camp where anybody, it wasn't a sort of democratic organization. They were leaving it to it, and I think it's about time people copped on, stopped buying this one. We pulled out and left it for them.
Yes, I agree. We should know and understand the fact, but we then should be thinking, what can we do? I would start with the Israeli ambassador, and that certainly would let the international world look, because the rest of them seem to be afraid to do it. Secondly, I would call for, I think, whether it's the government or somebody of authority, say, okay, you guys, boycott all Israeli goods. Don't buy anything that's, is connected with Israel. At least do the little bit that's there available for you to do. It's not much. You're not going out to fight Israel. You're doing, at least do something, for God's sake. And if all the countries of the world were to do that, who oppose what Israel is doing, Israel would stop doing it. If Joe Biden stopped the supply,
I mentioned this the last day. A guy sitting in on a bar in a street restaurant in Germany, he was arrested, doing nothing, having a pint. He had on a pro-Palestinian T-shirt. Arrested. What do you call it? The rector of St. Andrews. She's a black woman. I don't remember her name either. She was removed from the governorship of St. Andrews because she referred to Israeli genocide. By the way, it was very moderate. She basically said ICJ have described it as genocide type thing, which I thought was totally reasonable. But she was removed. Yeah.
We know it's genocide. Again, Pat, I'll come back to this. It's important for us to be aware of what's going on and be able to speak out. But I think it should go beyond speech. And I'm sure some of the people who are brighter in these matters could think of other ways in which pressure could be put on Israel. And of course, starting with armaments, that would be very important. Okay, let's leave that terrible, terrible world of Gaza. Let's leave the, I was going to say that not quite so terrible, but in some ways awful too, Olympics. The end of the Olympics was nearly as bad as the beginning, as far as I'm concerned. You remember the beginning was, they were all soaked on the sea, and this time...
shades of Rishi Sunak, hadn't it? Remember he came out to announce the election, and when he got drenched, he just knew, there's the tone set for this election.
Yeah, that was the beginning of, like, last night was better. It was in the stadium and it was pretty well, slick and so on. But God, they kept on doing the same thing. And I mean,
Aye,
all of the athletes were waving and blowing kiss. I
yeah.
just got tired of it.
I watched it for 10 minutes, Jude, and I said,
Yeah.
there's got to be more to life than this.
Oh yeah. Why? I wonder, to what extent do the athletes actually mix with each other? I would say there must be a good bonding between the people who are representing the various states that are at
Yeah.
the Olympics. But do they, for example, do the Canadians get to know the Australians or mix with them socially?
Apparently so. In fact,
Do
apparently
they?
I'm trying to be very polite here. Apparently there's a lot of intermingling, and maybe in a way there shouldn't be.
What are your sources, McGard? What are your
I remember reading
this
some years
damn
back,
slur?
they said, what happens when young fit females meet young fit males?
And especially, do you think that the track and the track suits that not track suits, but track gear that the women, for example, the Irish women's relay team wear are verging on the slightly provocative?
Hey, see, so I just walked down the street. Even my dear wife says one day, there's a wee girl when she says, "Why'd she bother putting on anything?"
Some of them look like it was painted on. Anyway,
Jesus, just like a second
shouldn't.
skin. We're not going
We are
there now.
two venerable seniors. We shouldn't be talking about young women and
But
their
anyway, sure,
how they
that's
look.
like. Judge, by the way, before and see, we're only 8 months.
We're in the last 10 minutes.
I have to bring one thing up. Did you read Stephen Collins about Venezuela this morning?
Jesus, yes, I did, of course.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think. Or do you want
Dude,
me to tell you?
it was the most spurious article I think I've read in years. He's warning because Sinn Féin supported Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him and so on, that there's a real lesson for democracy there. Talk about 2 and 2 making 40. It was the most ridiculous article. But here's the thing, dude. And he, as usual, know the way these people who make articles by leaving out absolutely key facts. Hugo Chavez came in and went totally left wing. The Americans got everything he's sort of saying it failed because of Chavez extreme left wing. No, it didn't. It failed because the Americans put in blockades right, left, and center. They totally boycotted the Venezuela. And dude, the Americans are interfering once again in Venezuela's politics. They're supporting the Maduro's opposition, who's a total free market and who will invite the American oil companies in. Dude, the Americans have a track record across South America of interfering in elections for their own vested interest. And Baker, the former Secretary of State, was on that program I watched last night, and he says, if we don't get oil, the free world stops working. And Venezuela has the largest, if I'm not totally incorrect, the largest reserves of oil in the world.
Well, to quote Tim Walz, I think what I would say to America with regard to South America, that is the US with regard to South America, mind your own damn business. As somebody said, they're not meant to be the policeman of the world, but they insist on being not just a policeman, but the guy who comes and takes stuff, the rent man, everything, all rolled into one. Also, one other thing, Pat, before we finish on this, Stephen Collins made a reference to somebody having called the South a failed state. And he seemed to be attributing that to Sinn Féin. Now, I don't remember ever. The only reference to a failed state I recall is Charlie Haughey.
He's referring to Northern. Dude, that was totally misleading as well. I meant to bring that up because, dude, there was no Sinn Féin has never. Dude, when so many people are homeless, when there are people going back to live with their mothers and fathers, when there's mortgages that are impossible to get, when there's rent costing now up to 1,800, 2,000 a month, like that, for a lot of young people, for Sinn Féin to be strident about housing and the need for housing is quite legitimate. But I don't remember Owen O'Brien, Mary Lou McDonald, anybody, Pierce Doherty, ever referring to this place as a failed state. Not a, by the way, I think as well, people like Stephen Collins think opposition parties should sort of grandstand for the government. And that's not how it works.
What he wants in that article is to tie Sinn Féin to Hugo Chavez or Maduro.
That's
if he can get that in the public mind, they'll say, "Oh, geez, those guys bad lot." When they mess of things. And Venezuela was a rich country. Look at all that oil. and he made a screw up of it, and that's what will happen here with these sinners. I think it's sort of so obvious that I don't think too many people can be taken in by it. Okay, Pat, there's a lot of other things we could talk about, but I want to end our little session today with a mention of a book of the week. Here is what I call one damned good read. It's quite I guess it's a fairly expensive book. I can't remember, but it's by this guy Bill Bryson.
I have about 6 of his books.
The Body, as he calls it, a guide for occupants. And it covers everything. It really is very, very interesting. Food and its effect on you, the immune system, equilibrium, the heart, chemistry department, the heart and blood. You suddenly begin to realize, God Almighty, the human body is an amazing thing. An amazing, made up of so many parts, I can't even begin to think of it. And it tells you how long your intestines are, stretched for a couple of miles.
By the way, I don't know if you've ever read it. I think it's Bill Bryson, Down Under. I think that's what it's called. And it's the funniest book I think I've ever read. You know, when you laugh out loud, you sort of go, jeepers. In fact, I think of about 6 of his books up there. By the way, I started reading this one. It was called, I don't know, it's the Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood. And I think it might be. Sorry, what did you say?
Let's hold it up again. Did I say it there? All right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it might be one of those sort of. It was the biggest seller in America, and I think about 1995. Don't know if they made a film of it, but it's a story about a woman. The short version is, she leaves a small town, and she becomes a director, and she becomes quite famous. And during an interview, she says, as a child, she was a victim of an abusive mother. It's a sort of throwaway line, and her and her mother fall out big time over it. You know, the mother, I think, liked a wee drink, and now and again could be a wee bit violent. But I mean, that's the story, and it's about the story of their journey and so on. So I wanted something light and so on, and it's got very good reviews. So you know, I'm not going to read James Joyce or anything. By the way, have you ever read James Joyce? Now to mention,
I've read the Dubliners, not the Dubliners, and Portrait of an Artist as a young man. And I've read the very odd chapter of Ulysses. I didn't try. I looked at a page of Finnegan's Wake and turned my head away. Too difficult for me. Too difficult. Actually, he's a very good writer, but he's very sort of. There's a depressing quality to him. Like if you take that Dubliners collection of short stories, the last one is titled "The Dead."
The Dead, yeah.
And it ends with the snow covering Ireland and covering the living and the dead. Oh, jeez. I
was about 15 and I started reading Finnegan's Wake. I said, talk about losing the will to live in about 5 minutes. You know.
But those must be good, you know. I mean, the experts tell us that they are. But anyway, I would suggest everybody should have a crack at Dubliners because it's short stories and it's very good. And have a look at the Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. It's good. It touches on things that are still kind of, or maybe not still, but to some extent still relevant.
Yeah.
Okay, Pat.
Dr. Collins, apparently Yale, and about 1950, they did a sort of who was the best playwright, who was the best author, who was the best poet was W.B. Yeats, the best author was James Joyce, and the best short story writer that for the first 50 years was Frank O'Connor. There's a lot of truth to that. I agree, but actually, when I think about it, in a way, I'm kind of against these awards and saying this is better than this. Yeah, I agree with that.
Know, it's like saying that person's better than that.
I think about 3 out of the 5 categories were Irish.
Yeah. Well, I thought we can be proud of that, but I don't think we should be pitting one against the other. They're all good if they're good writers. Okay, Pat. Enjoy yourself. Is the sun shining there?
No, it's not actually. It's got overcast. We had thunder and lightning last night.
I'll say a few prayers here and it'll get better. Okay?
See you later.
Bye, Pat.